right. Well, hi, everybody. I appreciate you taking a listen. This is Josh Bostic, and this is the first podcast of Rebel Health Collective. This is a project that I've had in the back of my mind for 6 months, close to a year probably. It's something that I am extremely passionate about. It's something that I feel the last 2 years of my life, my experiences, and my commitment to my health have really brought to light that I want to not only share with others, but hopefully build a community that can bring like-minded people together, kind of a crowdsourcing effort, if you want to call it that. I'm not looking to publish podcasts breaking down medical journals or the latest social media trends or debunking people and their theories. I really want this to be a place where people can come and tell their stories, their victories, their hardships, and try to help others that may be going through a similar situation. I already have several people in mind that I would love to get on the podcast and hear their stories, have them explain how they took a turn and began owning their own health and the difference that that made when they became an advocate for themselves. And beyond the friends and community that I've already made, I can't explain how happy I am to meet new people, hear new stories, and hopefully give them an avenue to tell those stories and build their communities. If this project ends up me getting on a microphone once a week, just talking about myself, then I have 100% failed. I really want for this to be a collective collaboration between many people of all ages from all over the world, really. It doesn't have to just be us in the United States, but let's hear other people's inputs from other countries, other societies, and other ways of life. And to try and change the way that we are being treated when we go into a doctor's office. And one thing that I want to make very, very clear is that I know that doctors have an extremely challenging job. The abundance of health issues that there are out in the world make it nearly impossible for them to go above and beyond just the general normal practices for what they've been taught, what their practice pushes, all of those regular norms that may work for a majority of the population. And honestly, when I take a step back and put myself in their shoes and try to look through it from my daily, weekly, monthly, yearly work grind is, I work my 40 hours. I do the best that I can in my job, and I go home to my family and focus on them. I give my best when I'm at work, and I care about my job, the people I work with, and want to put out a good product. But I'm not doing those 40 hours and then going home and spending another 10, 15 hours a week on learning Excel hacks or the latest industry trends and trying to forecast all this stuff. I'm there to do my job with the tools that I have and do it as best I can. So when I look at it in that lens, if they're in the rooms all the time, talking to patients, working on diagnosis, running tests, reviewing test results, all of those things, it's hard to say that they should be spending 20 hours a week or something like that on their own time away from their family, trying to stay up to date with new breakthroughs or advancing technologies or things that are on the cusp of being released. While I would love for that to be the case, I want to be realistic and understand that that's not the case. There are definitely doctors out there who love what they do, and medicine and science is their whole life. And those doctors exist, and they spend that kind of time and resources learning about all that stuff. But there's also a good bit out there that went to school 25 years ago. They learned what they learned and have been swamped nonstop ever since taking care of patients and may not have the opportunity to sit down for a couple hours a week and go through journals and learn new things that are coming out or new studies that are going on. So I just want to make it clear that I am by no means trying to rag on doctors. They have an extraordinarily hard job. And really, I guess my goal is to make their job easier. Let's go into our doctor's appointments prepared. Let's have a list of things that have been bothering us to lay out on the table right away. Let's not make them fish around and play 20 questions to kind of get in the right direction. Let's take logs of what we've been eating, what we've been doing, the exercise we've been doing, how we're feeling. There's a lot that we can do that are going to make their job easier and end up giving us much better care. I've been hearing from some of the podcasts and authors and experts that I listen to calling our healthcare system sick care. And my experience over the last 2.5 years has essentially been just that. It's been going to see healthcare professionals and specialists and really not given the time of day asking about my symptoms, my day-to-day life, what could be causing some of the issues that I've been having, and really just kind of a number at a service desk. You come in, you wait, you're seen for 15 minutes, you're given some sort of a prescription, and you're on your way until the next issue comes up. And the focus is never really how you got here or why you're having these symptoms or why you're feeling this pain. It's just a matter of here's the diagnosis and here is the prescription or whatever to fix the symptoms that you're having, not necessarily the underlying cause. And that's really been my focus over the last 2 years is trying some different techniques that I've found through various deep dark holes of the internet, connecting with people on Facebook, different books that I've read, and just a ton of different resources that are out there that have really helped me improve my overall health way more than any of the numerous doctor visits I've had lately. But we'll get into all that later. And before we go any further, I would like to reiterate that I am by no means a doctor. I have never practiced medicine. That's not what I went to school for. I have no nutrition certifications. I went to school for business and supply chain. This is not medical advice. These are not treatment plans or things that you should just willy-nilly be incorporating into your daily life. These are things that we need to talk with our healthcare professionals about so that if we do make some sort of a big change, we have a game plan to track that change, whether it be blood work, additional testing, having someone else's eyes that went to school or have had significant training to make sure that we're being healthy and our body is functioning correctly. And the changes that we are incorporating are actually doing good. You don't want to make some big change and end up making things worse. So just please keep that in mind that this is meant to be more of a community rather than something that you listen to and take it as the truth and incorporate into your daily life. Okay, so now that we have that addressed, you know that I am not a doctor. These are not medical advices. I'd like to give really a background on myself and some of the diagnoses and challenges that I've been facing over the last 2.5 years, those experiences, and really how I got to where I'm at now and why I'm so passionate about this project. And I guess the best way to jump into it is give a high level overview of myself. I am 30 years old. I'm married to the most amazing woman I could have ever asked for. We have a 2-year-old son named Bryson, who is just a wild man. He is the sweetest, most loving child that I could ever have imagined having in my life. But he is climbing and running and jumping and has no fear. So our lives are busy. We have two dogs. My wife and I both are employed, have great jobs, and are just super thankful for the life we have. So, at a high level, looking in, everything seems great. But about 2.5 years ago, I started realizing that something was off. It wasn't like I had this huge rash or my hair was falling out. There were no huge symptoms that were necessarily disrupting my daily life, but I knew, and my wife definitely knew, that something was off. I didn't have the energy levels I had before. I was kind of foggy. I'd go from a great mood to a really bad mood and didn't want to do a lot of the things that we were passionate about, such as mountain biking, going out and seeing friends. We're extremely active, so hiking, swimming, going to the lake, all those kind of things just really didn't have much of a desire to do anything but lay on the couch. It was a struggle to get up to go to work, to try and perform well. It was more of a just kind of coasting through life. Like I said, I didn't have any major symptoms other than really what I summed up as being lazy and unmotivated. My wife had brought up several times that maybe you should go see somebody, maybe you should do some labs or try to change up your diet or something. I didn't dismiss her, but didn't necessarily act on any of those things. And looking back, I really wish I would have sooner because I probably went 6 to 8 months with a condition that could have been treated way earlier and improved my health significantly much quicker. So I finally did get a lab done, not because I listened to my wife and her advice, not because I finally realized that I need to, it was financially driven. I get an HSA contribution from my employer if I do a once a year basic blood work panel, the cholesterol, the A1C, the triglycerides, all that stuff. You go in, you spend 10 minutes, they take your blood, you turn in a piece of paper, and you get $300 in your HSA. So time came around for me to do that. Expected to get the same results where everything was fine, nothing crazy out of the norm. Lo and behold, something was crazy out of the norm. I got a call from our nurse at my company. The blood work had been turned in just for the credit for the HSA. She essentially said, "You need to go to the ER right now." And first I was like, all right, well, thanks for the advice, but why? What's going on? It turns out that my A1C was greater than 13. My blood glucose level at the time was 350, so extremely high. My numbers went off the chart. It just stopped. So I thanked her for, her time in giving me a call because that's outside her normal job. She just brings in the paperwork and scans it in so I get my credit. So appreciate her reaching out and giving me advice that something was way off the charts. Who knows how long it would have taken me to go in and look into my portal and review that blood work? Because at the time I didn't think there was anything crazy going on. So we hang up. I let my wife know my blood work came in. My A1C and blood sugar results were off the charts. My nurse had called and said that she thinks I should go to the ER right away. I ended up calling one of my friends who I'd worked with previously, who was a type 1 diabetic, and told him the numbers and the results and asked him what his opinion was. He also said you should go to the ER right away. So took both of their advices, went in, checked myself in, got hooked up to all the monitors, got an IV, and met with the on-care team there. They did some tests, took my blood sugar levels, ultimately had come back and said that my diagnosis was type 2 diabetic and that I just needed to take metformin. They really didn't make it seem like it was going to be too big of a deal, like there was going to be any drastic, huge lifestyle changes or anything of that nature that I was really going to have to incorporate. And something just didn't seem right, I guess. And it's just one of those gut feeling intuitions. It just didn't sit right. So I got home, started going through the internet, and heaven forbid, sometimes you find some things that say you only have 5 more minutes to live doing that. But after 10 minutes of some quick Google searches, looking up what my A1C and my blood sugar levels and all of that mean and those ranges, I was basically dead set that I was a type 1 diabetic. And I had no idea what that meant, but I knew that was the diagnosis that I fit, not necessarily the type 2 that I'd gotten from the ER and the reassurance of just take this medication and it's going to be okay. So from there, I started looking up endocrinologists, trying to make an appointment, and of course, everywhere was just so booked out. I started at the top of the list trying to find some of the best doctors in my area and quickly broadened my search and then quickly just accepted I'll get in wherever I can as long as it's a specialist who knows what's going on and can give me an accurate diagnosis. I did finally end up getting in to see an endocrinologist about a month and a half since going to the ER. I went in and the doctor was pretty upfront and blunt and was like, hey, I really don't think this is type 2. Your body composition, your activity, it doesn't really fit the mold for type 2, but we'll do some additional testing specifically to diagnose type 1 or type 2 diabetes, seeing if your pancreas is still producing insulin, if it's just heavy insulin resistance. We'll get to the bottom of it. So we did more testing. The test results came back, and it was, in fact, type 1 diabetes. So that means that my pancreas was no longer, or was on the path to no longer produce insulin anymore. And that honestly really didn't come as to much of a shock because this was all that had been on my mind for the last month and a half, is looking into other people's stories, looking online for similar scenarios, different people's blood work results and their ultimate diagnosis. So from all that research, I had pretty much concluded that it was going to be a type 1 diagnosis and we just needed to wait for the blood work to come back. And so when he did confirm that, it wasn't the end of the world. It was more along the lines of, okay, so what do I have to do? Take a stronger medication? What's the fix to this? Unfortunately, it wasn't the same treatment for type 2 diabetes where you do have an oral medication that you can take. You can make a lot of progress by changing your diet, incorporating some different exercise regimens, things like that. Type 1 it's a life sentence. Your pancreas is useless. He's just taking up space at that point. And you've got to learn how to use insulin and carb count, exercise, which can make your blood sugar go low. So you need to eat, which can make your blood sugar skyrocket. And it's a lot to learn. And every day is different. So the impact on my life that I thought was going to be pretty marginal ended up being huge. And it ended up affecting my family and my wife. They kind of had to make more special meals and be more aware of my diet and try to help me get back to normal. And so it had been a couple months of using insulin and trying to get the hang of it, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. I mean, my actual blood sugar. I mean, I never got depressed or angry or resented it, I guess. I knew that it was something that I was going to have to learn and live with. But I was getting frustrated that it seemed like I had plateaued. My numbers weren't getting better necessarily. I was trying my hardest. I was giving it my all. I was trying to eat better, lose some weight, and be more active, make myself healthier. And I just couldn't. Nothing was working. Every day was different. I could eat literally the same meal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week, and I would get a different result every day, every meal, every hour. And of course, when it rains, it pours. 3, 4 months before my wife had our son is when I got my diagnosis. And so not only were we trying to learn how to become parents, that was inevitably coming down the road very soon, we were also trying to understand how to take care of me and my treatments and get back to the normal life that we were living, that we loved so much. And all of these highs and lows really impacted me because of the extra burden that I felt that I was putting on my wife. She had just given birth, freaking the coolest thing that the human body can do. And she's trying to recover. She's tired. She's been carrying around a huge watermelon for the last month or two. I felt like it was my job. It was my time. She had, done a 9 month sentence, and it was time for her to sit back and relax. But there'd be times where it would be my shift and I'd be taking care of our son, and I'd go low from walking around, holding him, trying to get him to go to sleep. Or I just had to go and wake her up and say, "Hey, I'm going low. I just wanted you to know in case he wakes up and he cries, I'm going to need to rely on you." And by no means did she ever make me feel guilty of that or complain, but it was more within myself. I felt like I wasn't providing, I wasn't holding up my share of things. And I know that's not how she looked at it. She's the most amazing person ever. But I felt like I was failing as a father, that I wasn't able to care for my own son because of my own shortcomings, essentially. And so that probably put me in the worst spot of my entire diagnosis. I remember times where my wife was out of town and it was just me and our son, and I had to just put him in the crib and listen to him cry because it wasn't safe for me to hold him. That destroyed me. I've never felt so low in my life, and I knew this isn't it. This isn't how this is going to go. I started thinking about him playing sports or us going on vacations. It wasn't about me and the impact on my life and how things are different. It was his life. Is he just going to become a couch potato because he can't go outside and play catch with his dad? Are we going to have to go to really unactive, sedentary vacations because I can't walk around Disney? Those were the thoughts that were really taking over my mind, and what really just drove me to say this isn't how it's going to be. I can't do this. I don't know what I have to do or how I have to do it, but there's got to be a way. There's some tricks or tips or other people that are 28 years old who live a lifestyle similar to mine and have figured this out. So I started, not so much just looking at a broad level of type 1 diabetes and how to manage it, but really getting into specific forums and groups on Facebook, groups on Reddit, listening to different podcasts. And my world was just opened up. There was all of these people who were doing all of these incredible things that weren't coming up in the mainstream news outlets or the doctor's office or any of the 50 pamphlets that I've gotten about being type 1 diabetic. It was just these people and their real life experiences and their blood work and their workouts and their CGM data. And they were doing it. They were shredded and healthy and living life. They weren't on the high and low roller coaster that I was facing. For all intents and purposes, they were some of the healthiest people I'd ever seen, diabetic or not. And so that really opened my eyes up of, hey, this is possible. I don't have to just sit on the couch all day or take 5 hours to mow my post-it sized yard, because every time I go out there, my blood sugar drops and I have to come in and eat and wait 10, 15, 20 minutes for it to come back up. But I think one of the coolest part about these communities is that sure, there was a lot of information and you can do this or you can do that, but it was the collaboration. It was someone going on this Facebook group and saying, "Hey, I'm having this issue. I've tried this, this, and this. and it doesn't seem to be working. Anyone have any ideas, suggestions, alternate therapies, or things that I could be trying? And there would just be all of these genuine people not only giving ideas, but just being absurdly open and transparent and relating to other people's struggles. And it was just awesome to see. It's not something that you see every day. You get on Facebook or Instagram and some of those places, and the comments can get so ugly. They can get so political. People are so divided. And that wasn't the case. It was people legitimately just caring about a stranger and taking time out of their day to talk about their experiences, what has worked for them, what some of their friends have done, or things that they've seen, and adding these publications or researches. And it was just amazing to see. And I think that's kind of what's driven me to want to create this community, but on a broader scale where it's not just diabetic focused, where it's probably going to have a lot of diabetic related content because that's what I deal with on a day to day basis. But I want it to be a resource for anyone who needs some sort of a help community to vent, to look for ideas, to share their story and be heard. So that gave me a lot of hope. And I really got involved in a lot of those groups. And, things honestly started to really improve. My numbers got a whole lot better. My A1Cs results kept dropping and getting lower and lower. Things were really looking good, and I was really starting to believe I've got this. I can deal with this. I feel better. My weight's going down. I'm able to go and work out and just live life without the constant interruptions that I had been experiencing. And for the next year, things went as good as they could have. I was hardly going low. My A1C was like 4.9, and I didn't feel like my life was necessarily as altered as it was when I was first diagnosed. But then things all started to change again. I had started to have really severe back pain, just a tightness. It felt like the best way to describe it was I had several really big fishing hooks just strung from the top to bottom of my back, and I was just like hanging from the ceiling. It felt like I was being constricted by a boa constrictor at all times. It hurt to bend over, to get up, to go up the stairs. If I sat in the car for more than 20 minutes, I felt like my spine and muscles were just becoming cement. I tried a bunch of different things, stretching, taking Tylenol and Advil and all those kind of things, and nothing seemed to work. I'd gone to the chiropractor for 2, 3 years before that and had never experienced anything like this. And I'd go in and get a temporary relief, a couple hours, and then the tightness would come back. My wife and I did a massage or two and kind of the same thing. We'd get some relief, and then before I knew it, just tightness all over again. And not wanting to wait as long as I did for my diabetic diagnosis, I decided, hey, I'm going to go see a doctor. I'm not going to do this again. Not going to struggle and wait this out. Let's go find out what's going on. I went in, I saw two different doctors. They did some blood work, and one of the results came back, and that was the GAD65 antibody test. My numbers were again off the charts. I'm just an overachiever like that, I guess, in some instances. I wish it was more in my professional career or winning the lottery, but my specialty seems to be blood work results. And so that came off the charts. I had a follow-up appointment in a week and was waiting to go in to see him. So I started Googling and seeing what it could be and all these different things. And one of the potential diagnoses were something called stiff person syndrome. And you may have heard it from Celine Dion, she was diagnosed with it. And it's essentially your body just becoming rigid and stiff and a board. It's a neurologic degenerative disease. Your mind, essentially, the neurons aren't firing like they should be, and it's not basically telling your muscles to relax. It's just you're in this constant fired, ready to go state, and your muscles is essentially just get so hard. So that was a really fun thing to read. My symptoms aligned up perfectly with it. I found a couple of treatments online and nothing seemed super promising, and it was a pretty rare disease that not a lot of people had. So unlike some of the cancers that are out there or diabetes where there's a large portion of the population that are impacted from it. So there's a lot of medical grants and research and projects going on to counteract those and try to heal people. That wasn't really the case for this. So the day had finally come, and we had gone over a lot of the blood work that we had done trying to uncover what might be going on. A lot of my other blood work was just barely out of range, nothing that had drawn too many red flags. And then we got to the GAD65 antibody test. And when my doctor brought this one up, they talked about a couple of the different reasons why my markers for this may have been so high. And one of them is, in fact, that I am a type 1 diabetic, can cause a spike in these antibodies, but usually not as high as what we were seeing. So the test that we took went up to a score of 250. The 250 score that the test went up to kind of signaled that it wasn't just from the diabetic and it was something different. Earlier, the side effects that I was feeling in my back and the pain with my muscles went along with one of the diagnoses that come with a really high GAD65 antibody test. It essentially brought up, there's something out there called stiff person syndrome, and it's an autoimmune and neurological disorder, and it basically causes rigidity and spasms in your trunk and limbs, which the path that I was going down over the last couple of those, I ask, is this something that you're familiar with? Have you guys ever treated something? And they had one patient before, but they said that they needed to give me a referral to go and see an actual specialist for this to get an official diagnosis. And so that's how the appointment really ended. You have some of these symptoms. It's in line with this rare disorder that's out there, but we can't do anything for you right now or give any recommendations until you go and see a neurologist. And really the only thing she would tell me is that the patient that they had seen previously was treating their symptoms with a muscle relaxer. So they were basically just medicated 24/7, taking these muscle relaxers in order to try and tamper down the spasms and the tightness that they were experiencing, which is something that I had seen online as a potential treatment method. And that's really all that she put forth as far as, if this really is what we're dealing with, this is the route that we could potentially take. And as I was leaving, I was just thinking, well, what does that mean? If I'm on muscle relaxers for the next 40 years, 50 years of my life, hey, what's that going to do to me long term? And what kind of impact does that have to my daily life? Am I going to be able to drive my car, take care of myself and go get groceries, take my kid to daycare? Am I going to be not bedridden necessarily, but, loopy and just not myself? And that's just not something that I was okay with. Didn't see that as a real path forward that I was going to be able to live with. And so they gave me a referral, said I would hear from the neurologist in maybe a week or two. It took some time for the paperwork to go through, get submitted, and be processed on their end. But, to be on the lookout and get in there as soon as they could get me in to see the specialist. And so 2.5, almost 3 weeks had gone by, and I hadn't heard anything from the specialist that they said that they were referring me to. So I called that primary care physician's office and, said, I just want to follow up. You guys said it would take about 2 weeks. Just wanted to make sure that everything got submitted on your end. And if you could give me their number so that I could start pestering them, that would be great. The person who answered the phone said, let me look into it and make sure that it got submitted. But as she was looking into it, it never got submitted. So I'd wasted 3 weeks just waiting basically for some paperwork to be done. And so she promised that it would be done that day, which was like a Thursday, and try to get these specialists to give me a call back so that I could get scheduled to go in as soon as possible. And so another week and a half, 2 weeks went by. I called the PCP just to make sure the paperwork had been done. It had this time, it had been submitted. And so they gave me the specialist's office number. I called them, got voicemail, left a voicemail, didn't hear back for 2 days, called again, no one answered, left another voicemail, and then probably waited another 3 or 4 days and called again. Finally talked to somebody. They said that there were some issues with the paperwork that had been sent over and that they needed to get back with the PCP and have it either redone or resubmitted. It got really frustrating that I had this issue and paperwork between two doctors that were outside of my control were what was keeping me from going in and seeing this specialist. I couldn't fill out the paperwork. I couldn't give myself a referral. And I'd actually started reaching out to other specialists in the meantime, just trying to get in to see somebody. They would either say, no, we need a referral. And then my PCP was saying that, no, we don't really work with that team or that center. So we just need to wait for the specialists that we work with to get back with us. It was this endless loop that was just driving me insane. And while this, what seemed to be never-ending game of telephone tag was going on, I knew I had to find some kind of relief or do something in the meantime. And that's when I started exploring some of the different physical therapy and wellness businesses around our hometown. And I ended up stumbling into a place called Epic Healthcare. Their primary focus is chiropractic. They do a lot of PT things. They have some really cool technology like shockwave, which helps break down a lot of the calcium buildup and scarring that can be built up. So I went in, did a consult with them. They did some x-rays. They felt my back and did this electric scan that basically tests the tension that's in your muscles. And my scores were once again just off the charts. I'm trying to be as transparent as I can with my story. I'll actually try to link the images from that testing in the podcast description below if it'll let me. So be on the lookout if that interests you. But anyway, when we were going over my results, they were saying that basically the results that I was pulling up throughout my whole back was similar to what they see in someone who's been in a super serious car accident. And they asked, is it like this all the time? And I told them it'd been months that I'd been dealing with this tightness, and it was just progressively getting worse. And so they built up a treatment plan. It was based on chiropractic care, trigger point injections, shockwave therapy, and spinal decompression, as well as a side of PT with some specific exercises and stretches for me to do throughout the week. And so I did that for 12 weeks, twice a week, and we did a check-in at the 6-week mark. And during that check-in, they basically redid their consult regimen that we had done, and we were trying to track my progress. I knew going in that it wasn't going to be from 0 to 100%. They had told me up front that we'll try to get up to, say, 40, 50%, and then from there we'll try to get up to 70 to 90%, somewhere in that range. So they never promised 100% back to normal from the get-go, and they were really upfront and honest about that. And they said, at 6 weeks in, if we redo this and it's not getting any better, we may have to completely change course and find a new treatment path. So I knew going in that it wasn't going to be a guaranteed thing, but there was just something about this team and the way that they greeted you when you went into the office, and they asked about my wife and my son, and if I was feeling any better, if I was feeling any worse. And if I said I was feeling better, it was, well, why? What have you been eating? What did you do this week? Were you as active as previously? Were you more active? Were you less stressed at work? They really tried to identify why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And it wasn't so much just you're dealing with this and here's a medication. It was very real and practical therapies that we were trying to implement into my life, which was the first time I'd ever been around a care team that, really looked into more than just my symptoms. They were trying to understand what made me feel better, what made me feel worse. It was really thorough and in-depth. At my 6-week midpoint check-in, after we had rerun all of the initial screenings and tests that they had done, we realized that I really wasn't making much progress. Not only did I not feel much better at all, but their scoring system and the way that they intook patients said the same thing. So from there, it was really okay, it's not just needing to do stretching and a tightness in your back. There's something beyond just back pain that's causing this. And at that point, they had told me that they do have what they referred to as a functional healthcare team. I had been on the physical side of the house, where it's chiropractic, it's trigger point injections, it's stretching and different techniques to help with your physical body. But they had on the other side of the house a functional team that focused on your insides, focusing on things such as your gut microbiome, different nutrition deficiencies that you may have, different vitamin deficiencies that you may have, things such as parasites inside you that could be affecting you and how you process food and just your overall well-being. They were talking about things that I'd never heard a doctor talk about. I had heard about your gut and I knew what your gut did, but a microbiome, excuse me, what's that? And then parasites, that's a real thing that I should be worried about. And it was like a 30-minute consult, and I learned so much. It just seemed different. That's the best way that I could put it. It wasn't someone saying, we'll try this, we'll try that, we'll give you this pill, we'll give you this prescription. It was a doctor who had truly spent 6 weeks getting to know me, and not just the pain that I was having, but my daily life. What work looked like. He knew that we had a 2-year-old who kept us on our toes at all times. He wanted to know everything. And so they gave me a pamphlet. They told me about some of the testing that we would do and just the overall process. And I ended up going home, talking to my wife. It wasn't covered by insurance. It wasn't cheap, but I just had this gut feeling that this is something that we should try out. And so we ultimately decided that it was worth a shot. I really trusted this care team. I had made no progress with my primary care physician or the multiple specialists that I had tried to get into. It seemed like a good path to try to get some answers. And so we did the testing. It ended up being a super extensive blood draw, a stool test, and a saliva test that I ended up taking over the course of a week and sending in the results. The results came back and it was just so in-depth. There was so many different tests that they ran, from my vitamins, my nutritional absorptions, different panels for autoimmune issues, diseases, just the most extensive blood work that I had ever seen or even knew that you could run. There was a lot of red, and it seemed in the weirdest way really promising, because it was all of these things that this doctor had tested for that were outside the bounds of what they should have been. And so for the first time in what seemed like a year at this point, I had actual results that were backing up that I had something going on. I don't know that saying I felt validated is necessarily the right way to put it, but I felt like I was on a path to be able to do something different, and that my trust in this care team was going to pay off. And so my wife and I went in for the follow-up consultation. They were going to walk us through their findings and what their suggested path forward was. And the doctor, who I love, he's pretty upfront and blunt about it. And he was just like, I don't know how you're functioning. Your stress levels are through the roof. Your adrenal glands are operating opposite of what they should be, meaning in the morning is when you should have the highest level, and at night it should be winding down. So basically you picture like a sloping graph. In the morning, say 7 o'clock, you should be at 100%, and then it should slowly go down throughout the day. And mine was opposite to that. So my body was essentially running off stress and cortisol because I had some serious nutrition and vitamin absorption issues, and that all came down to my gut microbiome. And after working us through it all, the doctor basically said that my gut and intestines are so inflamed that it's just wreaking havoc throughout my entire body. And it had tried all these different ways to alert me, and I had, I guess, just pushed them off, said it's just a heavy workload at work, it's stress, it's whatever. I'm not supposed to be sleeping, we have a baby. And so I'd put off all of these reasons, and eventually my body was like, you know what, this is it. We're going to basically paralyze you. We're going to start making things really hurt, and we're really going to get your attention. And it worked. And thankfully I found the appropriate care team to help me figure this out. And so we went through each of the tests that we ran line by line, and he broke down what the test means, what an optimal range is, what the normal American range is, and where I scored and why I may have scored where I scored, and what we can do to fix the ones that I was out of bounds on. And then we started talking about the next steps. And so I had the blood work. I could walk away with the results that I had and some of the information that they'd given me, or I could commit to working with them for basically the next 18 months, doing 2 more rounds of really extensive blood work and going on a supplement plan, as well as a diet that basically takes you almost to like a caveman diet. I'll put the link to that diet. It's called the AIP diet, the autoimmune protocol. I'll put a link to that at the bottom as well, if that's something you want to look into. And it's basically an exclusionary diet where you cut out all of these potential trigger foods for about a month, and then you start slowly reintroducing them back in and seeing if by cutting all those out, did your symptoms go away or get better? And then, if yes, which was my case, you start slowly adding things back in. So say you add gluten in, and all of a sudden your symptoms comes back. It helps you identify that, hey, gluten is something that I'm either intolerant to, I have an allergy to, or it just affects my body poorly. And we ultimately decided that it's something we wanted to go. They were the ones who had found the most out about my body and given us the most answers, and we had a lot of trust in them. They gave me a pretty big list of supplements to start, combating the vitamin and nutritional deficiencies that I was facing. And they put me on that AIP diet. And within about a month, I would say that I saw a 60 to 70% improvement in my back. It was slow. It was progressive. Every day I woke up and I felt a little bit better, and different parts of my life were going better as well. My stress was down. I was no longer just this person who could snap at the instant. The dog scratching at the back door could set me off. I wasn't that person anymore. I was going to bed better at night, going quicker and getting deeper sleep. I was starting to just have better overall energy levels, where I'd wake up and not need 20 minutes to get my feet. Kind of a alarm goes off, roll over and get the day going. So right now I am almost 4 months into this journey with the Epic Functional Health Team. In the next week or two, I'm going to be redoing my blood work, saliva, and stool results for the first time since starting this treatment plan with them. So far, I've been feeling really, really good. In the last week, though, I've been having a weird flare-up in my neck that I'd never have experienced before, and it was similar to what I was feeling throughout my whole back. So not 100% sure what's causing that, but I'm excited to see what my results will bring back. If the different treatments that we've been doing are actually helping and what improvements we've made. I mentioned the AIP diet earlier. I have gone through and excluded everything and had slowly started to bring foods back in. The only one that I really haven't brought back in fully is gluten at this point. And I'd say I really, really limit the dairy intake that I have. Maybe a little bit of butter and a little bit of cheese, but no milk. I've switched over to coconut yogurt. There's a ton of substitutes out there for dairy, and I'm using pretty much all of those. Reintroduced everything on the diet except gluten at all, and very, very limited dairy. And any sort of pill or supplement that I've been taking while working with the Epic team is all supplements that you can find at Walmart. You can buy them on Amazon. You can get them at GNC. I mean, they're all readily available, low risk, and not something that you need a prescription for. They're all relatively affordable. It's not like it's $800 a month. And it's just been incredible that I went from feeling like I needed to be on muscle relaxers for the rest of my life to cutting out 2 different types of food and going on some vitamins and supplements. Well, I don't want to bore you all too much with my story and my back history, seeing that this is only episode 1, and I would like to have as many of you share this and come back for episode 2 as possible. I'm going to end it there. I've got some stories that I want to share about fighting with insurance to get an insulin pump, or fighting with insurance to get the latest and greatest technology that's been FDA approved. I've got some different scenarios where I've changed, I think it's 4 times for different endos with my diabetes. And then I'd really like to focus some more on the testing and the results that I got with my functional health team, and compare that against some of the other panels that I'd gotten from regular PCPs, and just the difference of the blood work that was done. I'm also working on getting some really exciting guests scheduled to get onto the podcasts. They have some really unique stories and experiences that I know we all can learn from. Thank you for joining us on this first episode of Rebel Health Collective podcast. Please remember that your health journey is unique and powerful. Together, we can advocate for change, educate ourselves and others, and connect through our stories while transforming the healthcare system and inspiring resilience. I ask that you guys all stay empowered, stay informed, and stay connected. And until next time, keep championing your health journey.